The Health Fix podcast teaches you how to take charge of your health naturally by giving you the information you need to elevate your health.
Health Junkies, welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. On today's episode, I have Dr. Q Collins. He is a leading scientist when it comes to developing nutrition and metabolic therapies to treat cancer. And he has a long list of credentials. He's a PhD in clinical immunology, has a master's in oncotherapeutics, a master's in experimental pathology, and a bachelor's degree in poverty, healthcare, and cancer epidemiology. So he's got a lot of science background, and today we're going to be talking about deuterium. What the heck is that? It is a large hydrogen molecule that can gunk up your mitochondria, mess with how you make energy. It can even mess with your DNA and cause you to have genetic mutations. So this is a molecule we definitely want to know about. So let's welcome Dr. Q to the Health Fix. Hello there, Health Junkies. Welcome to another episode of the Health Fix. Today I have Q Collins on, and we are going to be talking about deuterium. And you might be saying, deuterium? Well, we will tell you what it is. We'll tell you how you can, why you want to be aware of it for first off, and what you can do to help yourself in managing the amount of deuterium you have in your system. So Q, welcome to the Health Fix.
Thank you so very much, Doc. I appreciate it.
So let's get started right away, because I think much like when I was pitched to have you on the podcast, I was like, deuterium, I've heard of this, but I don't remember what it is and how it works and all of those things. So how do we explain to folks what we're going to be talking about today, the main star of the show, the deuterium?
Yeah, very, very cool. So what we're going to talk about is some very basic stuff. I'll try to make it easy after 30 years of research. And it's going to sound like kindergarten stuff, and it's going to be very cool. So yes, deuterium, it's a big word. It sounds very scary, but it's just hydrogen, right? And there are really three types of hydrogen that everybody's heard of before. We've all heard of hydrogen. Mm-hmm. We've all heard of tritium. Tritium is that thing that blows things up. So that's the tritium, and that doesn't exist naturally. That is something we have to make in a lab that we really use. You know, you see the Geiger counters, and you always see it behind when they make nuclear bombs. So that's tritium.
Okay.
And this other one that naturally exists besides hydrogen is called deuterium. And it is, think of it as the big twin the heavy cousin of hydrogen.
Okay.
And it weighs twice as much. And it naturally exists. It's not a toxin. It's not bad. All these things that naturally exist, every one out of 6,666 hydrogens are deuterium.
Wow.
So it's a rare thing, but it's a natural thing, and we'll talk about the good parts about it and the bad parts about it, but it's very simple. And regular hydrogen is really, its real name is called protium. So protium is really, and we just don't say it.
Okay. Noted. So now we know what it is. Now, of course, I like a good story. So how the heck did you get into researching this type of hydrogen?
So it's a long story. So I am a clinical immunologist. That's what I have one of my PhDs in. And I've been a cancer researcher over 30, 35 years now. So, you know, I that's what I do. Long story, I lost, during that time, over the last 10, 15 years, I lost both my wife and daughter to cancer. To make a long story very short, essentially I got into this type of research, moving more from immunology and using different growth factors and chemotherapies and things that I had invented and patented for large pharmaceutical companies, to understanding more about diet, understanding more about how lifestyle changes mattered, because the type of cancer that my wife developed didn't have any standard of care treatment. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I got here. So I started about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, helping invent the ketogenic diet. And I'm probably one of the they like to call me one of the godfathers of the ketogenic diet when it comes to using it for therapeutic purposes for cancer. So we started using it back then. And what we found out as we were making all these papers and all this research and doing all these things, that there's nothing special about the ketogenic diet. We found out that it's simply because it's a high-fat diet. If the animal ate grass instead of eating grains or corn or all these things, grass is deuterium depleted, and therefore the fat was deuterium depleted. And so when you eat an animal, you're eating this deuterium depleted food, and your body simply makes deuterium depleted water when it does that.
Huh. All right. So that being said, you're talking about food, you're talking about water. So we must find deuterium in food and water. And tell us a little bit about how our quality of food and water can help us to determine what to do with our deuterium levels and what it has to do with it.
Yeah. So I'll even take a little. Let's talk about the foundation. I'll try to simplify the way this works.
Okay.
So think of what we do as the foundation of science, and what I mean by that, if you look, as we all know, and you have a very knowledgeable listenership. So everything's about the elements that's around, right? And we may see that as hair and bones and skin and water and food, but on the molecular level, there are nitrogen, hydrogens, carbons, and oxygens. These are just elements. It just so happens that the most plentiful element that we know of is hydrogen, right? The hydrogen is 66% of what we see. So our bodies are 60 to 6%, depending on our age, of our constituents in our body. We also, and then water, which is made from the combination of hydrogen and oxygen. Again, just like Earth being 3/4 water, we are anywhere from 60 to 3/4 water, 60 to 75% water, depending on if we're a baby or if we're very, very elderly. So water is important. Water's everything when it comes to who we are. And when this heavy hydrogen, deuterium, binds with oxygen, it makes something called heavy water. And our body has everything about evolution and the way it works really has to do with our bodies being able to deplete deuterium. And so when we, you've studied a lot about medicine and science, what we always talk about is the application, or we talk about symptoms, but for the most part, we don't really understand cause. It's always the golden ticket that we're always looking for. What's the cause of this disease? Where did it come from? That's our goal in life. Well, that's really what we end up stumbling into, is the way this works. And we now are all hearing about this thing called metabolism. It's the hottest thing out there. And everybody talking about the mitochondria. Everybody and their mama now is coming out being mitochondrial experts. And it's very interesting because that really is the important thing. Even the cause of most of the chronic illnesses that we know of now, like cancer, diabetes, chronic fatigue, Alzheimer's, all of these have a very big part of it is as a metabolic disorder, which means your mitochondria are broken, or your body, and the mitochondria, we often think about the mitochondria and metabolism. We only think about energy, right? About ATP and energy. And that's one thing we're into, so we'll talk about that. But the metabolism actually has two parts to it. Not only making energy, but making from your food you eat, your cells, your body parts, your proteins, your fats, everything that you are comes out of your metabolism. And so when your metabolism is broken, not only can you not make enough energy, you can't make enough correct body parts. I said all this because hydrogens is what feeds those mitochondria. So that's what we've started to find. Now, 4 Nobel Prizes have been given for this field. And that's why I always laugh when people say, I've never heard of it. Right. I know, it's the most amazing thing. 4 Nobel Prizes have been given for this. The last one in 2018 for what's called the nanomotors. Inside your mitochondria, we always call the powerhouse of cells, but actually a mitochondria is more like a big bus or a big factory that has a lot of engines inside of it. And these engines are very, very small, almost microscopic hair-like structures that are called nanomotors. And these nanomotors are the things that have your ATP cycle in it, or your Krebs cycle, TCA cycle, that make 98 to 99% of the energy that you make in your body. And so it works by taking hydrogens across the membrane of the mitochondria, like you can imagine just like a water flow. So a flow of hydrogens passing a turbine, electric turbine engine. And as it passes it, your body makes energy. So hydrogen goes in, energy is made, energy, ATP, energy. And it makes all of this energy, tremendous amounts of energy, from stripping those hydrogens out of the food you eat, across the nanomotors, into your mitochondria to make this energy. It also strips all those things too, now to also make your proteins and your fats and your glucose molecules, your hair on your head. It determines everything you are. And it determines it because all of those things that the metabolism makes also feed back on your DNA to control how your DNA works. So we all spend a lot of time worrying about our DNA. And the truth is, it's not our DNA. The DNA is just a map that's there. It's really the way our body controls what our DNA is able to make. So it turns it on and turns it off. And that's called epigenetics. And what we found, I know it's going to sound like I'm saying, it may sound confusing, but what we're finding is that hydrogen are the things that actually go into the DNA and are the epigenetic controllers of what the DNA makes. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Here's the cool part about it. Since deuterium is twice as big as hydrogen, you can imagine it's twice as big. It's the only element that's there that you can say, you add one little neutron and now you've got this completely big thing. So going from a baseball to going to a softball, imagine it like that. Or taking a pool ball, right? A pool ball that's twice as heavy and a tennis ball that's there. So you can imagine if you had a bunch of tennis balls and you put a pool ball in between it, that, if you try to hit that tennis ball with the tennis racket, it's going to break your racket. That's what deuterium does. It gets into your mitochondria and hits these tiny little nanomotors and breaks them. When it breaks them, you can't make energy anymore. When it becomes part of a molecule, like your insulin receptors or your insulin, then it doesn't have the same shape. So you can think of Lego bits, right? If you take big Legos, instead of using small Legos, what you make is not going to look the same. Mm. So that really is, in a nutshell, that is it. It's just that the more deuterium you have, the more screwed up your body is going to be. Screwed up energy-wise, where you can get chronic fatigue, and we see a lot of Lyme's patients or people with brain fog. They have high levels of deuterium, and if you can lower the deuterium levels, then you get rid of that symptom. Mm-hmm. Think of everything as being symptoms, not the disease itself. And the same way is if you look at those deuterium levels, your body has all of these mechanisms to try to get rid of. And people will say, well, oh my gosh, they must be secret mechanisms. They're not. It's the way you sleep, right? Because your body gets rid of stuff, especially deuterium, while you're in deep and REM sleep. So you have garbage bags inside your body all day long that your body fills up with deuterium. And at nighttime, it releases it through your lymphatics and lymphatic system. That's those pathways that are in your brain and body to get rid of toxins and junk. It gets rid of it in your poop. It gets rid of it in your urine. So as you have kidney problems, or you have a bad gut, your biome gets screwed up, or you have diarrhea, constipation. What that happens when those things happen is you can't get rid of your deuterium. So now these garbage bags burst and now you have higher levels of deuterium because your body is not able to deplete it. And by not being able to deplete it, then you go into the spiraling cycle down because you don't have the energy to build new molecules, new pieces of your body, or even if you build it, they're going to be contaminated with the wrong hydrogens. So you start getting things like autoimmune disease. Mm-hmm. So you can see that this what I want everybody just to imagine in their mind, the right stuff and the wrong stuff. And when you have too much of the wrong stuff becoming part of you, that's what sickness and disease is.
Got it. So our habits that we have and the most fundamental factors, such as how well we sleep, how much sleep we get a night, REM sleep, all of that, and then the quality of our foods, the quality of our water, our air, etc. Now, yes. You are in LA, right?
Yes.
And so air quality can be an issue in that case, I would guess, in terms of higher amounts of deuterium. Now, are you finding that if you look at folks in, say, LA compared to, say, the middle of Montana, have you done any studies in terms of location related?
Yes. So this is an old science. So the funniest part about deuterium is that we don't know this as consumers and regular people running around, but deuterium is used to find out where foods are from in the world. So there are higher levels of deuterium or at the equators, right? Mm-hmm. Higher levels of the equators at low or lower altitudes, so in valleys or below sea level, by oceans. There are lower levels at higher levels of elevation in the top of mountains, Himalayas, the Rockies, the Appalachians, lower levels there. And also lower levels at the poles, the North Pole and South Poles, which is why icebergs and things have lower amounts of deuterium in them for two reasons. One, they're different places. And because these cousins, or identical twins, these cousins, deuterium and protium, or deuterium and hydrogen, are different, or slightly different. They actually have different boiling points and freezing points and everything. So by having these differences, even so deuterium freezes first and boils last, right? So when you boil your water, it's great. When you see steam come off, the first steam you see leaving, that's hydrogen. And what's left behind in the water, the heavy stuff, are the heavier deuterium molecules. So it's really, really cool, right? Because it's just even that kind of thing. When your ice freezes in the freezer first, the first thing to freeze is the deuterium. So you can actually put water in a freezer, start to freeze, and that when it first starts to ice over, you can take that layer off, and that's deuterium. And you can get rid of it, and now your water has less deuterium in it than to begin with.
Interesting. Now, I saw on your website that you can test water and you can test different things such as urine, different outputs that we have. Now, what's the process for testing that? Because now I'm like, okay, so I'm a geek, so I would put my water in the freezer, pull the top part off, throw that out, and go, okay, so I want to know in the part that I threw off when I put into like a bowl or something, if I could test that and see how much is in there. How does it work to test the water?
Yeah, so I think that's one of our claim to fame. As I said, this has been around for a long time. The first Nobel Prize given in 32 on this. But our group patented the first test to be able to show it in the human body. Okay. That's what took it from being a science to being able to be a medical application. And we did this about 4 years ago. And it's really simple. We checked the deuterium levels or hydrogen levels in your breath as a marker for what's in your tissue, because your breath, half of the moisture that's comes from your heart and your lungs. So we're able to do that as a general marker for what's in your body. And we can test what's in your saliva or urine or any of those fluids, even tears, to find out exactly how much is in the rivers that flow through you. And we call that like your waste product, right? Because your muscles, your brain, everything dumps off deuterium to your blood so it can get rid of it. So it can go to your kidney, and your kidney can filter it out and you can urinate out the deuterium. And that's the reason. Another cool thing, we just talked about sleep. That's one of the reasons that at nighttime, when you sleep through the night, the first thing you do when you wake up, you've got to urinate and you got to poop. The reason is trying to it's the whole idea is to get rid of that deuterium and get it out, gone, as soon as it's done. And when you can't do that, again, like I said, that's a sign of weakness. So you simply measure it using our kits. We call them determinator kits. So you measure it using our kits just to measure your breath, water in your breath, and water in your saliva and urine. And then we can also measure it just using the water that you drink or the air conditioning fluid, the environment around you. We measure deuterium in cholesterol and insulin and hair cells to see how much deuterium has actually contaminated your body.
Really?
Yeah, because this is really cool. Your audience is going to like this. When you think about, people will talk about cholesterol being bad and good, and there's always this argument. What we found out, it has nothing. Cholesterol is the most important nutrient that you have in your body, and what happens, unfortunately, as your deuterium levels get high, you get deuterium in your cholesterol, and the sun can't break it, and so when you go outside to make vitamin D, it can't even, you can stay out there all you want to, it cannot break it. And therefore you see this higher levels of cholesterol around in your body, no matter what you do. And so by becoming deuterium depleted, you're able now to make better cholesterol and now better vitamin D and better estrogen and better testosterone, better bile salts, all of these things that are related to sickness or better health. You're able to start making more of those molecules, and you don't have to take supplements nor drugs to do it because your body will make it.
Interesting. Because I do see a lot of people that we are giving multiple amounts of fish oil, and we're giving, other berberines, whatever it may be, to try to help either balance blood sugar or we're balancing cholesterol, and we're not getting results with that. And that's one of my big things on my podcast is I like to talk about when we don't get results with the typical standard kind of care in terms of the natural medicine world, or even the conventional for that matter, because I know that I've had patients on statins and their levels of cholesterol don't change drastically. They may go down a little, but they won't get into a normal range, and the medication dosage just keeps going up and up and up. So what do you do then in terms of your clinic? Because I know you have a clinic dedicated to working on taking out that excess kind of depleting, or I don't know what the word, what would you call it? Taking out
deuterium depletion.
There you go. So deuterium depletion is the actual treatment. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah, this is cool. So we not only have a clinic, but we have a lot of doctors around the world, China, Italy, Israel. I've been to 16 countries so far talking about this, but we have a lot of clinics and teaching doctors how to do this. But you're right, the whole idea of what we do, especially with cancer, since I am a clinical immunologist for oncology. So what we do is by lowering the deuterium levels, and we can lower those we use deuterium depleted water. Mm-hmm. So it's a special water that we've taken deuterium out of using a distillation process. So you can imagine distilling water on a 70-foot tower under vacuum, which is really a bomb, under vacuum thousands of times, and freezing it. And so what we do is, remember I talked about that steam coming off.
Yeah.
We actually make that steam, we capture it, and that steam has lower amounts of deuterium in it. And so we continually do that, and we measure it using those tests that you can now get from us that then tell us what the deuterium amount is. And we've got this down to a science. So we know that if we boil it first or run it so many times, we know what that level is going to be at certain pressures. So what we do is we use the different deuterium depletion mechanisms. And then we go back and we start working with doctors like you, or with your customers and clients, to then look at their sleep and fix their sleep, not based on what we've been told about It's almost like functional medicine. It really is functional. So we're fixing your sleep so it does what it's supposed to do, right? So we're fixing your sleep so it depletes deuterium. That tells us how much REM sleep and deep sleep you need. And we actually can modulate REM sleep and deep sleep by deuterium levels. We start looking at exercise patterns, when you should go outside. Are you making vitamin D, right? And so are you making enough vitamin D? And then looking at the relationship between cholesterol and vitamin D, and we'll see as that ability to make vitamin D goes up, then or melatonin go up. We know that your cholesterol is now cleaning up, and you're becoming healthier because your body turns over. Remember, everybody has to remember this. Your whole body turns over. Every cell, every protein, everything in your body, every 7 years, you're a new person. So certain parts of your body, like your gut, turn over every day. Other parts of your body, like your skin, take a week. Your hair takes 28 days. So what you can do is, as you put the right constituents back into yourself, you actually age yourself backwards and you're able to be healthier. So it's a very, very simple concept to understand. And it's everything that medicine has always been trying to do. What we try to do is what you were saying. We try instead now to treat the symptoms. And so we do give supplements or standard of care, or we tell you to run 7 miles because we're treating a symptom, right? So you're saying, now I can do, like you said, I can think much better now, or I can get pregnant now. That's really symptoms and not cause. Are you following me, Doc? I mean, I know you're good. You tell me if I'm explaining this right. So it's not a whack-a-mole. Right now we use a whack-a-mole approach in medicine, and we have to because we don't understand causes of things. But we supplement around, we give medicine around, we give treatments around, even surgeries to treat the symptoms of a disease or the symptoms of unwellness. Right. So what we're saying instead is, no, let's instead return your body to a deuterium depleted state. And what I mean by the deuterium depleted state, and that means lower, it doesn't mean there's no deuterium in your body. It just means it's at a point to where your body is able to deplete it, right?
Okay.
So a person that's 23 has much more ability to deplete than a person that's 88. So we have to then make sure that we do everything for that person. Therefore, the person at 88 doesn't have as much margin for error. So we have to make sure the diet's tight, the supplements are right, that they go out in the sun, that they are able to sleep and breathe, because oxygen is the second most important thing, because like I said before, oxygen binds to hydrogen to make water, and it binds the deuterium first. And so it binds the deuterium first to pull it out of the system so it can be out of the way. This is the reason. So people don't sit around and just think about how life works. So you can go, I did a 72-day fast. So I know for sure you can go without eating for 72 days. You can go without water for 11 days, right? We know all these things. What you can't do, you can't go without oxygen for more than 2 minutes, right? That's because if you don't have oxygen, it can't bind to the deuterium, and therefore all those nanomotors that we're talking about will stop working. And if the nanomotors start working, that's death, because you can't make any more energy, period. And once that happens, you're dead. You can't restart it. That's really what death is. Death is an inability to make more energy, which means, or to get rid of the deuterium anymore, to deplete it. That's really it.
Okay. So you guys have done a lot of work in terms of I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm going to look at it in this perspective of someone might be listening to this and going, is deuterium kind of like the linking factor between how long I can live based on my metabolic processes?
Oh man, you're brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you took me 30 years to get there. Thank you very much. What were you? You can just help me out right away. So yes, so that really is it. Think of it as it is the glue that holds everything together. So even when we look at functional medicine and we look at labs, so you'll take your blood work. The funniest part of blood work and what we consider normal is that the samples we take from normal people, they're not normal. The deuterium levels are higher because we're all just have exposed to so much more deuterium now, so much more stress, not sleeping, that once we change your levels of deuterium, your blood numbers by themselves change completely. And that's where we need to start from, right? It's the basic thing. So yes, it is a connection between health, between aging, between everything, because think about what I'm saying. So I'm essentially telling you, if you make yourself new, you're going to be better off.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this, right? You put new engines in your car. You put new bicycle seats in, new curtains. Why? Because it makes it younger and last longer and work better. We're saying the same thing.
So it's almost like, I mean, the way I kind of keep it in my head, and I'm thinking nanomotors, and I'm thinking back to my father worked in machines and built race cars. I'm kind of like, it's like an oil change of sorts, or a fuel, it's obviously a fuel change. So I'm kind of like an oil radiator flush, something in my head in terms of what's going on. Now, one of the things I'd be thinking about in this respect, because I see a lot of people in Washington State who have high cholesterol and low vitamin D. And then maybe they've done 23andMe, so they bring me their labs, and I see that it says they've got the VSM TAQ genetic marker there. Now, I have to go, I've been seeing more and more people with this genetic mutation, and I have to go to myself, are we creating that because of deuterium? Is that what's happening?
That's beautiful. Yes. See, that's the, and again, evolutionarily, deuterium, your environment is what has made us evolve. Mm-hmm. And so as we've gotten high levels of deuterium, why do we have higher levels now? Because the way we grow our foods, GMO foods, for instance, have higher levels of deuterium in it. Because what deuterium does on the smallest thing, what it does, it feeds bacteria. Deuterium is required for things that grow fast. Bacteria, viruses, cancer cells, fat cells, right? These things. But good things too. Babies, teenagers have high levels of deuterium because they need them to grow. And it works by, as I said before, by getting into the DNA and keeping the DNA open so it can't fold. When your DNA is open, or RNA is open, that allows now to be replicated. And that's what makes things multiply. It's your DNA multiplying. How fast is what determines it. So it's your DNA multiplying. And most of the time in our body, our DNA replicates according to the way it's supposed to. It only gets out of whack, which we call cancer, when it starts to multiply all the time and multiply faster. And one type of cell starts to grow faster than the rest of the cells. That's cancer. And that's why cancer cells and people that have cancer have higher levels of deuterium. But this is also true for people that have diabetes, people that have Alzheimer's, all these chronic illnesses that are metabolically, that the reason for is metabolism. You can always relate back, they're going to 100% of the time have higher levels of deuterium.
Uh-huh. Wow. So I'm kind of thinking of a couple of things now that you got my mind thinking about all these chronic illnesses. In particular, I'm thinking of some of my patients with fibromyalgia. Yes. I'm thinking of patients with chronic fatigue in general, and that we have no reason for why they're fatigued. Mm-hmm. Now, I talk a lot about trauma and chronic trauma and how that relates to these things as well. What effect does deuterium have on chronic trauma and someone's response to their environment and that factor?
Very cool. We have, I'm laughing because I just did a podcast on this, and I'm a scientist. Again, I have 2 PhDs and 3 masters, so I'm not a woo-woo person, but I got blown away by this. We just added a new director, Isabella Belarus, and we're going to even talk about trauma, we're going to go back to emotional trauma, which is crazy. And we know for sure, because there's papers that have been published by Oxford University, at the relationship between anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia and the level of deuterium, right? So they see that these patients had higher levels of deuterium, and when they decreased it, they were able actually to treat schizophrenia and depression and anxiety simply by lowering their deuterium levels. Now, they did it both via water and diet, using a ketogenic diet, but it is something that's used. But we recently have started a program called Emotional Oncology. And emotional oncology is actually just looking at the trauma from past emotions and its relationship to disease, and this particular cancer. And we have a study going on now, and I'll invite people once we open it up again, where we're looking at the relationship between breast cancer on left side and right side and trauma that has happened in a woman's life, whether it be a divorce or problems with the mother or kids, and it's amazing how much they're related, to the point that Isabel has treated quite a few patients when she was in France, to where if we can address just that emotional part, then that even cancer has been, early stage cancer has resolved itself. Now, why do I say, how am I going to make this with deuterium? What we're able to find out is if we're able to deplete those people's deuterium first, they're able to accomplish getting rid of that emotional problem that they have, that stressor, that trauma, because they have the energy and the cognitive ability to do it. When you're tired, you can't make your friggin' self well. It's that simple. And so traumas like that is true. We also look at things like brain traumas in our PSTD patients. We do the post-traumatic stress syndrome patients. I'm an Oprah, I keep saying disease. So, but as we look at this, by able to lower their deuterium levels and then being able to address some of the trauma, the actual trauma, because when we look at this, the amazing thing is it actually gives rise to clinical manifestations. And what I mean by that, that trauma, our body, what it seems is even our mind sees these traumas, and the only thing it can do to release it is to cause something to happen in our body, right? Maybe that's to get us to notice. Pain, for instance. A lot of pain is just to say, hey, wake up, there's a problem. Fix the problem, the pain goes away. You don't get rid of pain by treating pain. You dull the pain that way, right? So that's where we are in society today. We give Oxycontin and all these other things to dull the pain instead of figuring out what the pain is from. Like your fibromyalgia patients is a great example. And so by lowering those deuterium levels, what we're able to do now is address the problem that's there. And by addressing the problem that's there, it takes care of the symptom of fibromyalgia, the symptom of Lyme disease. Now, that's not trying to insult them to say it's not true. It is real. It's friggin' really real, except the treatments that are out there, and God bless us all because we want to help the patient, all we can do is treat the symptoms and to make them feel better. And a lot of times what they will do, they can feel better for the rest of their lives because we can supplement and medicate around the problem.
Until we destroy the kidneys.
Yeah, that's
doing all of that and make people crazy from buckets of supplements,
sure.
Which is, kind of one of the big things that I'm always in my mind going, how can I treat the physiology? How can I go back to the root of what's going on? And instead of like, yeah, here's your 8 supplements to put a patch on whatever we're doing, or here's your medication, whatever. So in terms of folks that are
Doc, real quick, I want to say you just said something very beautiful, and I want to make sure I address that. You exactly did it right. What you end up doing by needlessly giving supplements and needlessly giving things, making your kidney overwork, you kill your kidney's ability to deplete deuterium. Then you're screwed, because that's the reason you see this spiraling down to where you can't give enough medication and you can't give enough supplements anymore because the kidney can't work anymore. And then we have to talk about a kidney transplant. The reason you're going to need a kidney transplant is because your body can't deplete this deuterium anymore. So it's amazing how you're figuring this out. It really is, if everybody just thinks in that terms, what do I need to do to deplete deuterium? Everything else will fall in line. Not saying you won't need a doctor. That's not the point.
Right.
The idea, that you're going to die, but you're going to die healthy. It's crazy. We should be able, if we would do this, there's no reason for our bodies not to be able to live to 150, 200 years old without disease. But you're still going to die,
Right.
but you can just die healthy. That's okay.
No, that's how I want it to be. I do not want to end up, in a nursing home or end up, it's crazy what happens to people in the dying process. My mom and my aunt both died of breast cancer. And so I'm very interested in the cancer aspect of this as well. So tell us a little bit about the keto component here, because here's one of the things that I see in my practice, and no one's really been able to fully explain to me why people struggle with the keto diet. And even myself, I find I get on the keto diet, I'm only doing keto, and all of a sudden I start to swell and have issues. And so I go, okay, there's clearly something with my physiology that will not let me break down the fat. So I want to hear about this in terms of, is that a deuterium issue? Is it what's happening when folks are not able to tolerate? Because and I know this is 5,000 questions in one. Also, what is your version of the keto diet too? Because I think there's a lot of versions of it. So I'd like to hear first, what's the version of it, and what do you see go wrong with the keto, and what do folks need to do? Because that's what I get a lot of questions about.
No, I love it. And again, being one of the grandfathers of the ketogenic diet, I kind of laugh because I've said so many things that are wrong. so I get it. So when I talk about the ketogenic diet, one thing I am now, as I've gotten older and gone through all the diets and been advocates of everything from vegan to Mediterranean to keto, being the thing that is the best, your body doesn't give a damn. It really doesn't. Your body wants the hydrogens. It wants the right hydrogens. It wants the right building components. So I am now agnostic about diets. When I talk about keto, I use a keto therapeutic diet. And what that means is I'm not talking about lifestyle. Okay. I am talking about, you have cancer. This is the kind of diet you need to give us a year to get you through this, right? You don't have to be on it for the rest of your life, but this is what it's for. Now what we're understanding, which is so neat, now that I have this understanding of deuterium and deuterium levels in food, and being able to, we have the largest catalog of deuterium, of food that has deuterium in it in the world. That's one of the things our research lab does. So we have thousands and thousands of measurements about deuterium levels in everything from plants to animals to fish to chicken to even things as things when we look at what mushrooms are better for you and why in particular chaga mushroom is good for it. It's because we look at these deuterium levels and now we understand how these things work. So yes. So when you look, as you were, I'm sorry, what was the question? I got off really quickly. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I asked 5 in one big burst. It's basically what version of the keto diet and therapeutically, now that you mentioned it's not a lifestyle, it's therapeutic, which I like to hear that in a way because, and I'll explain later, but what is your version for folks for cancer? Here's
what's cool now. It's not about what you eat. It's about what it's made of, right? So now we really look at the deuterium depleted diet. Yes, if I need to get more fats into you, that can be more keto and less carbs. But the carbs, again, think of it as a bus. It has nothing to do with the carb itself. It's just that usually carbs have higher levels of deuterium on them. Processed foods, when they're carbs, are all friggin' deuterium because they use water to make them, right? And water from rivers have high levels of deuterium in them, which is why our ancestors had lower levels, because when our ancestors did not drink a lot of water, they went down to if they went down to the lakes or river to drink water, tigers or lions would eat them up. It didn't work that way. So what they did is they instead started to feed on plants, and they also started to feed on animals that ate plants, which is why we don't have records of high levels of records of cancer 500-600 years ago. And my gosh, especially 5,000 years, there's no cancer. There are things that we thought were cancer, but it's not like the cancer that we know today, right? Mm-hmm. It's nothing at all. It would be like in situ cancer. In other words, oh, I think I see a cell. That's what they're talking about when they talk about cancer in the ancient times. It's not what we think about as cancer, where kids are being born with it, right? There's these crazy things that are going now. So what we look at is the deuterium depletion. What that means is now we can design diets for a vegan, for a vegetarian, for a fruitarian, a diet for a person that's a carnivore. So I've talked about this on a lot of different things, and we can design around something that makes it work for you, because we don't want, although the old, let food be your medicine sounds good, but when your food truly tastes like medicine to you, then you're screwed. That's not what we want to do. So ketogenic diets, there's two things that we're doing especially wrong right now with ketogenic diets. Is the first thing we must understand, and we published a paper on this, what to eat and what not to eat in the Journal of Neurosciences, is that when you look at certain ketogenic diets, especially in research, they're just using Crisco oil as saying that's a ketogenic diet. That's not. What you really are talking about is quality oils in this, right? And so what you want to be able to do is have plant sources and animal sources that have low deuterium amounts in it. That's the main thing. Now, even if you go, but I can look at your genetic makeup and determine if you're a person that can process polysaturated fats. If I look at you and see your gene does not do that, then what I've got to make sure to either do is to you epigenetically change that gene to where it turns on, because people misunderstand how these tests work. 23andMe or any real genetic test, 23andMe is not one of them, is when you really look at this, is what they're saying is that you have those genes. They're not saying that they're on or off. And so even when it says you are recessive, you actually have copies of that gene that are not active. Mm-hmm. So you really actually, everybody has all the same genes, except some are on and off, or you have more copies of it. So the more copies of it determines what they see.
Okay? Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
So if I look at you, I can turn that gene on so you can now use more fats if that's necessary. But instead, what I would probably try to do is work within the confines of who you are. And as I deplete your deuterium, what you will even see is your 23andMe report change. It's crazy. It's just, people have to understand, what I love about what we do is we empower you to be who you want to be, the healthiest person you want to be. Mm-hmm. Because again, especially with our cancer patients, I always say if we can help you cure yourself of cancer, we want to make sure that you have a better life moving forward. So working on gratitude and having a purpose in life, but also knowing not to be terrified of cancer once it's gone, because anybody that's had cancer will tell you that the worst thing is worrying about it coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important that you mention that 23andMe is not a real genetic test. Can you explain to folks why and what is recommended instead?
So here's what I mean by that. I should say, so it's 23andMe can give you all of the genes and tell all these things. What it doesn't do is a thing that it tries to sell you. And that means that you're from this place or that place. And no, that's, if you look at what they say, they have a 30% probability, the high or 50% of their data being correct. So screw that, don't do that. But now, what can you do with the data that they give you from a person that can look at it?
Yes.
The most important thing that I can tell you from all my years of research and being one of the first people to work on a human genome project is this. Work on with the team that worked on it. So I'm sorry, Craig, if you're listening. I'm not taking your Craig Venter. I'm not taking your shine. You were the boss. So, but if you look at this, and people hear what I'm saying that ultimately all they can give you is a map. That's all they can give you. And so if it's a map, you want to get a better map from somebody. But secondarily, what you really want to do is to find out what genes are being turned on and off. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. You want to know what genes are. You don't want to know your genes. You want to know what genes are working and what they're doing. And then a professional like you can look at that and say, well, now let's go try to turn that on or off using magnesium or using all these, but simply to say you don't have this gene or you're recessive for it, that doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. So you should, most people don't even know that it's actually the FDA, it's illegal to actually treat somebody because of genetic information you have. That telling it doesn't make it doesn't make any sense. It never has worked, and we spent trillions of dollars trying to do this. And right. So that's really. But what you can do instead is to see if they're important genes, if you can turn them on and off. For instance, BRCA. If BRCA's there, so what? What you want to make sure is that when BRCA is activated, or something about having BRCA is activated, that's what gives rise to ovarian cancer and breast cancer. Not having the friggin' BRCA gene itself. It has nothing to do with it. It's just a marker for what you need to do in your life and keep a close look on.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yes. And I think it is interesting to watch. I mean, I haven't done it with anyone because 23andMe is just like an added thing to kind of draw a net and be like, is there something we can work with, in there? But it makes, or what have you turned on is basically why I do it, is to see, well, what's turned on. But then I haven't done it with anyone yet to see after therapy, what did we turn off? How did we manipulate anything? I'd love to see a company that does that. And if you know one.
Here's even cool. To show you how it works, this is so cool. We've had patients, everybody knows what telomeres, right? Everybody had telomeres. Telomeres are it. Telomeres determine if you're going to die in a year or you're going to live another 100 years. And it's all important. Telomeres, the length of your telomeres, the DNA around these chromosomes, the length of it is simply a relationship to how much deuterium is in it. Because when you have these bigger balls of deuterium, it takes one deuterium attracts 100 more elements of hydrogen. We call it molecular tunneling. So what happens in telomeres in older people, they're shorter because the deuterium levels are higher and they start to shorten up and kink. And so it looks like they're physically shorter. We put people on deuterium depletion, and a year later, their telomeres are longer. Now, that's the same person. So the science of what they're saying is bullcrap, right? It has nothing to do with the length of it. It's not the telomeres length itself. You didn't add more links in the chain. Yeah. All you did was uncrimp the chain. And so, yes, we believe that. Telomeres are a great measure of how much deuterium you have in your DNA. Duh. So that's what's so cool. You can use that as an assay now when you understand why it's making you live longer. It's a sign of making you live longer because you're actually healthier and physiologically younger, newer. That's why you're living longer.
Wow. So basically we can sum up your science in terms of you are making people younger one day at a time by working on their deuterium levels. Now, in terms of giving folks something they can do, obviously I want to talk about your clinic a little bit, but before we jump to that, no, let's jump to that first and then we'll talk the other thing. So tell folks like what happens, like someone comes into your clinic and I see that there's stuff online too. And with COVID, I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering too. So this is probably a question of what would someone
be getting out of your clinic that either is in person or is telemedicine based?
So we're really we call it a tele-life platform.
Okay.
So, because we really have patients all over the world. We've treated now more than 12,000 patients with these protocols. So it is not something that's new, right? So yes, we have our own clinic here that's a metabolic oncology clinic. I started that clinic in metabolic oncology 10 years ago before anybody was using that word. What that does is a little different. Those people come in here, we use things. So if you think about what we do, we use deuterium levels and metabolism to make your normal cells healthier, because lower amounts of deuterium feed energy to healthy cells. So we make that healthier. But lower levels of deuterium also make cancer cells sicker, because cancer cells, as I said, need deuterium to grow. So that's why ketogenic diets work on cancer cells. It's making them weaker, starving them of this deuterium. So once we get those cancer cells sick, you are not going to, at this time, there's no natural medicine that will stop a stage 4 cancer. We can slow it down, we can make it sick, but that's when we need other things to make cancer cells that are sensitive now to be able to kill them. So what are those things? We can use hyperbaric oxygen therapy. People use ozone, chemotherapy, radiation, mistletoe. Our big one that we're using now, where the first clinic in the United States has done it, we're using methadone. Everybody knows what methadone was, something that was used for heroin addicts to get them off heroin. But the cool thing is that we're doing a related group in Germany was doing a test to check on methadone as being an alternative for pain medication in hospice houses, right? So you could actually not be comatose in the last days of your life, because the medicines they put you on are morphine. It's horrible. It's just not good. You get constipated. Methadone's very, very light, and so they were given this in these clinics, in the hospice houses, and lo and behold, half the people walked out of the hospice house and they didn't die. And we're like, that doesn't make any sense. What happens is that the medication, methadone, synthesizes the cancer cell, so it's more fragile, and chemo killed it. So the residual chemo that was flowing around in their bodies actually killed the cancer cells, and they had no longer had cancer. So you had people with stage 4 cancer walking out of hospice house. They've been doing it now 3 or 4 years. We started, so we use methadone. We use deuterium depleted water IVs. Of course, vitamin C. Vitamin C is a deuterium deplete. That's what it's for. That's the way it works. We worked with a Nobel laureate who came up with octane to find out that's how IV vitamin C works. It simply looks like glucose, and those carbons or those hydrogens actually get attached now to that glucose-like molecule and get pulled out. Wow. So we're able to now take all of these patients and not only give them a higher quality of life by having more energy, no brain fog, no pain because of their deuterium levels lower, but we're also able to affect the cancer cells themselves. Now, we work with people can do this via telemedicine on the cancer side. They can come in, or we can have doctors prescribe the methadone in their states, and then we put them on deuterium depletion, and we work with their oncologist or practitioner, if they don't have an oncologist, to now allow those people, those professionals, to do what they do and do it well. So like for yourself, you have patients, we don't want you to become a deuterium depletion expert. It took me 30 years and 5 degrees. No, but what we can do is to make sure that we bolster you up and support you to where everything that you do works better. So a patient or a client can go online, get the modules that we have, and those modules are ways to fix and repair different pieces of your ability to deplete deuterium, to get deuterium depleted water, to understand taking classes on deuterium deplete, how to eat deuterium depleted diets, how to design them, how to eat them, how to understand, taking our emotional oncology to then go at some of the things in your past, in your mind that are making you sick that you don't know about, especially my brothers, my men out there. We're horrible at it. Women at least, will listen, but we always have to, it's hard to get through our hard shells, which is why we die at an incredible rate for cancers that shouldn't be killing us, like prostate cancer. So getting rid of all those things and fixing your sleep, because it's not like these commercials where you see the 15, or I love these new 21-year-olds that are going, I can't sleep, and so I'm going to spend $400 on. No, we're talking about people that are sick, and it's not because you're an insomniac that you're not sleeping. It's the disease or disorder that's causing you not to be able to sleep. So we teach that, and then you're able to sleep. And everybody knows a good sleep, you're just going to do better. But now we know why, and we're able to measure it. So you can go online. You can go to ddcenters.com, ddcenters.com, or Energy for a Better You, Energy for a Better You spelled out.com. And you can find about all this information. You can get a free consult. And then we have there's a lot. It's a very complex organization. What I mean, we put a lot of thought into this. So even we have this portal, and the way the portal works is it takes all of your information and lifestyle information and measures it against what it says that you need to get better clinical outcomes. It's like functional medicine times 1,000. So, and then we say, these are the things that you need to do. And it goes as far as even strange things like, what do people that beat cancer watch on Netflix? It really may have a difference, but we tell you what it is and give you the choices to make those. So how should I walk? What should I drink? How often should I be outside? We get all this from the thousands and thousands and literally thousands of papers that we skimmed and saying, this is what will give you better clinical outcomes. So we give you a map to get there, and then we measure using this portal and giving your different statuses, all these labs that you give back. And then you're able to see where you are on that map and change your therapy as you go. So a doctor can say, this is not working. And we can say, yeah, but wait a minute. It says it's going to work in 3 months because here are these 7 papers that say this is how long it's going to take. So we are total guides because we've been able to free up our time because we go at the cause and not at the symptoms. Mm-hmm. So we look at the symptoms and then we get through, and all the work that we get, it's not like getting stuff off Facebook. These are all validated studies. So It's not that, so it's things that you spend all your time doing right now. We just have cloned them and put them in a database to use AI now to use deuterium and the relations of deuterium and hydrogen, that relationship to health, and then looking at that relationship to wellness and the different labs that are there. And then as we see those deuterium levels go down, we determine if you are getting the results you're supposed to. And if you're not, then we can go back and pick apart what's wrong to fix that next thing.
Okay.
So everybody can just go to the site, ddcenters.com or Energy for a Better You, read about it, but you don't have to come in. But if you want to fly in, and we have a lot of people here that do fly in and to get the special things that our integrated doctor can do. It's Dr. Alan Green. You can fly in, and we have hotels and things like that. And there's plenty of hotel rooms right now, needless to say. Mm-hmm. But you can fly in and do things like hyperthermia. Hyperthermia is another technique that uses heat, high levels of heat delivered by UV that can be aimed specifically at the cancer cell and kill the cancer cell without killing normal cell. So you're able to do all of these things. That's where our clinic works. And we also do this for athletes. We won 6 gold medals in the last Olympics. So you may be in there getting yourself treated, and you see a pro basketball player or football player because they understand this. and getting that extra energy is the difference between LeBron James, I think is a great example. Everybody tends to know who LeBron James is that he puts $1 million into his diet, and he really has a deuterium depleted lifestyle. But that $1 million is going to give him 7 more years of basketball, where he's making $38 million doing that. And so we're trying to take that same approach and making everybody's a LeBron James. Everybody's just as important to their family as LeBron James is to his.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the message that you're giving off it for everyone, and I think this is a great way to kind of sum up this wonderful interview, is that you're worth it. It's important to take care of yourself, and the time and effort that you put into your health, you're going to get back, especially if you're looking at the data and you're looking at, checking in and making sure that what changes you are making are actually having an impact. Because unfortunately, I think it's very common right now for folks to make changes and never check the impact that they've made. And then it's quick to say things aren't changing, things aren't working. And ultimately, data is king.
Yeah, amen. I love it, because you have Fitbit watches, we have Muse, we have all these. You can connect it to it, and we have what we call our personal health detective, and it's like this genie in a bottle that gives you, as you said, gives you the data where you don't have to try to become a scientist. It says, next step is number 2. Go to next step. Oh, number 2 is not working as well. What are you not doing? I don't think you're what? Look, your Fitbit is saying you're not sleeping. You said you slept. It's up to you. If you want to lie and kid yourself, cool. But we give you the choice to be healthy, because you have all the information now. We make it easy. So thank you. That's it.
Health simplified. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Q. I really appreciate you coming on, and I would love to make sure that we chat a little bit further in the future as to how things are developing with your clinic and some of your future endeavors, because it sounds like you've got some stuff on the horizon too that's evolving. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, and I appreciate what you do, because I just I checked everything out and went, she's my kind of person. I love this. So thank you so much for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to blab about what we do.
Hey, Health Junkies, Dr. Janine Krause here. I hope you enjoyed my podcast. Guess what? I have a Facebook group. It's called Anti-Aging Health Tips with Dr. Janine Krause. So if you want a little bit more of the Health Fix podcast, head over to my Facebook group and let's chat. Now, I'm also offering a health transformation and restoration program. It's a one-on-one with me, and it's for folks who are sick and tired of going to doc after doc and health coach after health coach and not seeing the results that they want and deserve. In my program, I'm working with folks with transformation. So this isn't just a light program. This is a big deal. I'm going to change how you think about your health and your life kind of program. And I'm super excited to offer it to folks. And if you are at all interested, we should talk. I'm offering 45 minutes free with me chatting to see if and how I can help you. And you can get all the details over at my website, drjkraussnd.com. All right, you've survived another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. Have a great day, whatever you're doing.
Subscribe, rate, and share info.